How's it going, everyone? It's Avi from Weather Sponge 5000, and in this video, we're going to determine the next possibilities we could see Tropical Storm Danielle form, where we could see Tropical Storm Danielle have a possibility of developing as early as next weekend. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. So let's first take a look at the European computer model for the entire Northern Atlantic, and of course, right now it's quiet. Currently, the National Hurricane Center isn't forecasting any sort of tropical wave having the possibility of developing into a tropical cyclone within the next 5 days, and it's likely going to stay quiet at least for the near future, between 5 to 7 days from now. Right now, of course, we have a lot of stable air. We're in a positive MJO pattern, so there is a lot of dry air that's suppressing tropical cyclone activity for the time being, and it should stay that way. I'd say at least for a week, a little bit more, before maybe we have the possibility of a new tropical cyclone developing. So if I were to continue to move forward, we do have some convection over towards the Carolinas, but that's more associated with the cold front moving through, not necessarily a well-defined center of circulation, so no chance of development there. And we do have some instability and some convection happening just south of the main development region, but there's two things going against it. For one thing is that there's a lot of stable air just to the north of it that's sort of suppressing a lot of enough convection from occurring for this to really develop a well-defined low pressure system. And another thing is that it's a little bit too far south to where it'll have a strong enough Coriolis effect for to have a good chance of attaining enough rotation for a well-defined low pressure system to develop. So there isn't really those areas of thunderstorm activity do not have any chance of developing. However, that could change, I'd say, by next weekend based on what the European model is stating, because if we were to continue to move forward, we do see an influx of moisture begin to come along the western African coast at this time, and we could see a low pressure system develop off of this enhanced amount of convection just off the African coast, where if I were to continue to move forward, we do see a low pressure system move right over the Cape Verde Islands of Africa. And while it isn't necessarily very strong, it is at least well defined enough to the point where the European model is forecasting a low pressure system to develop right around the Cape Verde Islands by next weekend into early next week. So there's still a lot of time for this to for the computer models to gain more certainty with the forecast. But we do see that we do see a well-defined low pressure system. However, there are several things that we're going to need to pay very close attention to over the next several days to really determine if this has a good possibility of developing. And I forgot to mention, we also have another low pressure system that does have the possibility into next week of developing. So we need to pay close attention to this into next week. But there's still a lot of time for the computer models to iron out the forecast. But there's several things that could inhibit these two low pressure systems from really making the jump to tropical storm status. For one thing is that if we were to take a look at the latitude at which this low pressure is located, you see that it's a little bit further northward, and that might be a problem for two reasons. For one thing is that the sea surface temperatures are a little bit cooler further northward, and I'd say just if you're anywhere north of the Cape Verde Islands of Africa, then the temperatures do drop below 80 degrees. It's still in the mid to upper 70s, so it's still certainly possible for a tropical storm to maybe have a chance of developing in temperatures that are just slightly cooler than 80 degrees, but it's a lot more difficult when this low pressure system is further northward, as if it wants to have a much better chance of developing into Tropical Storm Danielle, it needs to be located a little bit further southward. And of course, that could happen because I'm going around 8 to 10 days out with this forecast, so we could easily see the ridge be a little bit further southward than usual for this low pressure system to stay south enough to where it will be over the warmer sea surface temperatures of the main developed region. However, that still has yet to be seen. And another thing is that since it is so far northward, it's going to be more exposed to a lot of this Saharan dust that's further northward as well, and a lot of the more stable air that's going to be associated with the backside of this Bermuda Azores high. So that would inhibit the amount of convection that will occur around center circulation with this storm moving a little bit further northward to where it'll be more exposed by dry air. We could take a look at that right now by taking a look at the relative humidity, where we do see quite a bit of dry air to the west of it, and you see that it's gonna have a little bit more of a difficult time with the cooler sea surface temperatures, as well as the enhanced amount of dry air further northward. So that should limit its strengthening. That could limit its strengthening or its possibility of developing by a lot. So we need to pay very close attention to that. And you see with this whole pressure system as well, we do have the European model is currently expecting a high amount of dry air, which is fairly typical when we're in a positive MJO pattern, where typically the Atlantic for a lot of areas there's a high amount of stability. So this could certainly inhibit tropical cyclone development within the next couple of weeks, almost, depending on how long a positive MJO pattern lasts. And if we were to take a look at the GFS model, the good news is that the GFS model isn't really forecasting anything. It does expect more moisture to move in right around the same time period as what the European model is stating, but isn't really developing any sort of well-defined low pressure system to where it could be considered a tropical wave that does have a chance of making the jump to tropical storm status, as we do see a little bit more moisture, but it's still gonna have a little bit of issues with the amount of stable air that's gonna be in the north of it. And this convection could be a little bit too far north to where it will be able to absorb enough of that heat associated with the warm waters of the main developed region to have a possibility of developing into Tropical Storm Danielle. So still quite a bit of questions, but it's at least something to be aware of that potentially as early as next week. And we could see that our next tropical wave that may have the possibility of developing into Tropical Storm Danielle. Still an extremely high amount of certainty, but on this channel, I want to keep you guys updated even when it's a long range forecast that does not have a high amount of certainty, because I want you guys to stay prepared in case of any possibility, whether it's a short term, whether it's in the short term or in the long term future. So that's pretty much my point of my channel. I just want to keep you guys updated, even if it's a long range forecast and it's a little bit uncertain, but I'll keep you guys updated as the certainty does rise over the next several days. But just be aware that there could be that possibility of a tropical wave coming off the African coast that may have the chance of developing, but we need to take a look at how the factors will play out by that time. So just be aware that right around the main developed region and the Cape Verde Islands especially. Now, to show you guys sea surface temperatures, you see that right around where the Cape Verde Islands are, we do see the sea surface temperatures are cooler than 80 degrees, right around 25 degrees Celsius, which is right around the upper 70s in terms of sea surface temperatures. So it's going to be key in terms of its latitude of how far north or south this moisture or convection will move to really determine if this does have a good chance of developing into Tropical Storm Danielle. But of course, we could see sea surface temperatures rise above 80 degrees, especially since there is a high amount of stability, which will prevent the shortwave radiation from being blocked by clouds. So we could see the sea surface temperatures rise above 80 degrees by the time this tropical wave does move through the main developed region. So we just need to wait and see. Of course, this is 10 days out, and we could see sea surface temperatures rise above 8 degrees within the next 10 days, but we'll just have to wait and see how the conditions will play out by that time period. And taking a look at the MJO pattern forecast, right now we're in a heavy positive MJO pattern, which makes conditions for tropical cyclone development less favorable at this time. The air is a little bit too stable, but you see head into the next few weeks, the positive MJO patterns should subside, which is definitely concerning, especially since Now we're going to enter the more active part of the hurricane season, which is in August, where we're going to see the negative MJO pattern move through, which will allow for more of an upward motion right around in the atmosphere, right around where the northern Atlantic is, which will create conditions more favorable for tropical cyclone development. So that's something of concern. But as of right now, it seems like it's quiet for the Atlantic, but that could change, especially with this negative NJO pattern that's going to move through within around 2 weeks from now, which it almost is around the same time this tropical wave should come off of Africa. So it's suddenly something to be aware of as well. Now, taking a look at my forecast when it comes to the possibility of Tropical Storm Danielle, it could develop somewhere in this region, but still I want to emphasize a high amount of uncertainty. Take it with a huge grain of salt. A lot could change within the next 10 days, but I just want to keep you guys aware that there is that possibility a tropical wave could come off the African coast by the 10-day mark that could have the possibility of developing. So make sure to pay close attention to that. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content, and I hope you guys have a great day.